Johnny, Cleo, Honorable
Ooh, it's icy.
Oh, Satani, Jinoba. Oh, devil, oh, devil. Oh, Usoraba Kusaka Soka in the Pesani, Uno than even the Safamu location, saying when you're your dome, what's in a question, Mandika Dini and the Kupaka Regani, Kusaka Zimbabwe, oh, Yarekuta but you know Baba, when the Jesu and go on to cover, and you go suffer, but you are paid and she can dafa. Jinoba, oh, Satani, Jinoba, oh, devil, oh, devil, oh, kila zakondo notisunga, manje na jesu dichakukunda, zikakubinga unofafunda, kosi ya usunda pati nosunda, mana kutambutika, mana kushungurutika, vese, kapachi na kushambitika, iyo kunzira na moya se, Satani Jinoba, oh, Satani Jinoba, oh, devil, oh, devil, oh, Usoraba Kusaka Soka in the Pesani, Uno than even if you suffer location, saying when you're dome, but you never question, and then you got the new one that Kupaka Regani. Shakpana, Sawaba Shakpana, Takuya, na Jesu, Jinoba, oh, Satani, Jinoba, oh, devil, oh, devil, oh, Satani,
Greetings, Zimbabwe, and welcome to Zimbabwe Daily. My name is Yvonne Muchaga, and this is the show Behind the Mic, a program where we look at current affairs, issues, and everything that's trending in the country. And today I'm excited to be joined by the chairperson of the Crisis and Zimbabwe Coalition, Mr. MUTASA, and General President. Comrade, welcome.
Thank you very much for inviting us, and good afternoon, viewers. It is my pleasure to be here.
Awesome. And as we are here, we are going to be talking about the state of the economy right now. We saw yesterday companies writing letters to its clients, different companies, Dairy Board, Surrey Chickens, all the different companies that work with people, and saying that the credit facility has been removed because of the pronouncements that were made by the president on the earlier this week. So we just want to break it down, Mr. MUTASA. We want to break it down. What does this mean?
Right. So I'm from Crisis in Zimbabwe Coalition, and we are focused on it's a federation of various civic society organizations, students, labor, and other civil society organizations. We are primarily focused on fighting for democracy, good governance, and social and economic justice. And this challenge shows why the Crisis in Zimbabwe Coalition's mission is important. Firstly, we have identified and defined the Zimbabwean crisis as a crisis in governance. And this crisis in governance is manifesting in three layers. Firstly, governance as state-society relations. And we're talking about the lack of democracy in this country, repression, a government that does not consult citizens, as in this case, a government that comes up with arbitrary policies overnight, as we witnessed in this case. And also a government that is closing all democratic spaces. So there are many people even today many companies who want to voice their concerns, but who cannot do so because they know the nature of the state that we have and that they will suffer serious reprisals. We've seen a statement said to be from Bank IBC, and they've now rejected that. It's not their statement. It is understandable because we've got a crisis in terms of state-societal relations.
All right.
We also have, the crisis also is a crisis of governance, as in economic relations and livelihoods. And this is quite key as we discuss this matter. One, we have seen that the economy is imploding,
right,
and the government is failing to manage the economy. We now have an economy that is working for a few, and the economy has been catalyzed, it has been captured by a few, and it's working for a few who got arbitrage opportunities, a few who gets government tenders, and a few in the ruling elites.
Right.
But the whole population, the majority, are suffering. So that is key to also appreciate the context. And then finally, the crisis is manifesting in terms of failure to provide public service. Go to our hospitals, there's a crisis. You can't get painkillers, you can't get medicines. There are no equipments. Go to our schools, they are a caricature of the past. You can't get textbooks. Teachers are demotivated. They are not teaching. Roads, everything. So we must understand this pronouncement and what is happening in this economy from that perspective, that we've got a crisis in governance.
Right.
And this is what we are witnessing.
And would you say the pronouncement by the president is a show of maybe panicking about what's going on? I didn't understand, why such a sudden announcement. It felt hurried. And I think the one thing that you mentioned, failure to consult. And I'm not too sure if industry was consulted on this, if even the banks themselves were consulted, and to have the whole state president coming through to make such pronouncements, I think it baffled my mind, and being someone who doesn't really understand economics that much. But I'm thinking if it was maybe the minister making such a pronouncement, and there are seen to be huge challenges that are following such pronouncements, then the president can step in and make correct thing. Now, if the president is the one who's made such a pronouncement, what others have termed illegal and unlawful, I don't know, then how do we fix this?
Yeah, so it doesn't even need economists. I'm not an economist as well. I'm a public policy trained
Right.
in public policy. But it just needs common sense. We are dealing with a government that is, one, desperate.
Right.
You could see with the posture and the stature of the president and how hurriedly this thing was done, and also done nocturnal. You could see that it's a government that is desperate. It is a government that sees that things are not working. We are seeing state failure in all facets, whether in the economy, whether in our politics, and everywhere. There's state failure. So it is an act of desperation, one, but it also shows a government that is arrogant. I don't think there was anyone who was consulted. If business was consulted, they would have given proper advice. If banks were consulted, they are professionals in that sector. They would have provided very sound advice.
Right.
If labor, for example, was consulted, this policy should have gone through the tripartite negotiating forum. In terms of the tripartite negotiating forum act, workers, business should sit down with government and proffer these policies. In terms of our own constitution, section 13 of the constitution, it enjoins, or it obliges the state to give citizens effective participation in policy formulation and implementation.
Right.
Civil society organizations were not consulted. If we were consulted, we would have given sound advice. So it's one, dictatorship in action. The dictator always knows everything. The dictator always decides, and the dictator always forces citizens to accept and to get what they pronounce.
And
it is
seems
always
like
about cohesion.
There's always this offside in terms of such policies and stuff. We remember, the statutory instruments that were introduced during the COVID era, and the panic that just that causes within the industry and the effect that it has. I don't know if these are unintended effects or maybe something that they could not foresee, probably because of what you say, that it's non-consultative. It's just they think about it and then they pronounce it without fully consulting at the consequences of the action. Now we've got a problem in our country right now. Businesses are panicking, the people are panicking, and that will in turn have an effect on our livelihoods, as you have highlighted. Now, what should we really do? What can Zimbabweans do right now? What can business do right now? Because labor is tight, society is tight. We're a highly informalized society, but at the same time, we also depend on kashagi kind of econet, getting some loans so that we can go by now. How?
So I think the first thing is to also realize that it's not just citizens who are panicking, it's not just business that are panicking, and labor and all of us. The rulers are also panicking. That pronouncement was an act of panic.
Right.
They don't know what to do. The only challenge that we have is that the citizens are not ready to make things right. The citizens also are trapped in fear. So the first thing that we need to do is to ensure that we free ourselves from fear.
Right.
All of us, we need to get out of this fear and understand that united and together, we've got more power than the few people who are misruling and misgoverning this economy. Look at them. How many are they versus the number of students? How many are they versus the number of workers in this country, both formal and informal sector? How many are they versus registered voters, for example? They are over 5.6. How can a whole nation be held to ransom? A few people. Of course, we know they have got the monopoly of violence in terms of state power. They've got the police, they've got the military. But look, the policeman is also a citizen. After beating us when we are protesting, they go to the same OK shop and they see they have to face 2,500 RTGS price of 2-liter cooking oil now. They have to face a 400 RTGS loaf of bread in OK. They send the kids to the same schools. So at some point, we need to unite. I think the issue is not about those who are oppressing and repressing us.
Right.
The issue is about Zimbabweans. I've been having dialogue with many workers, both formal and informal. You ask workers, why can't we stop this nonsense once and for all? They are afraid of losing their jobs. They think that the salary, at least we have got this at least syndrome. At least I'm still getting something.
Right.
But we need to work from a point of view of what is the type of Zimbabwe that we want. The Zimbabwe that we want should inform our actions. Do we need a Zimbabwe that continues to be run this way? Do we need a Zimbabwe where you can't even plan for your kids? You can't even plan for their education? All of us here, we don't know whether we're going to manage to pay school fees next term.
Yeah.
All of us, if any one of our members falls sick, we are not able to go and pay for medical care. Is that the Zimbabwe that we want? So firstly, it is about the conviction. Zimbabweans need to have the same conviction that those who fought for liberation had. Zimbabweans need to have the same convictions that those who fought against a brutal apartheid system in South Africa had. It's not about the military. They were facing a brutal military regime of Ian Smith. They were facing a brutal military regime of Botha, but they had the resolve that we need a different South Africa. We need a different Zimbabwe. So that's the first thing. The second thing, all we are witnessing is a result of failure to follow our constitution, lack of constitutionalism, lack of rule of law, lack of respect for human rights. For example, the president is not supposed to announce and to pronounce monetary policy.
Right.
Our laws are very clear. The Reserve Bank Act is very clear. All the other laws are very clear on who should deal with monetary policies. We even have a monetary policy committee that should deal with these issues. So the president's pronouncements are unconstitutional. He doesn't have those powers. He's not supposed to be doing so. So we need as citizens to ensure that we use our constitution. The constitution that we have, the 2013 one, we are now 9 years down the line.
Yeah.
It's very progressive on paper. What we have not done is to put it into use. In
Right.
practice, the constitution is not there. And especially after 2017 November, where we took a wrong turn, in my view, as a nation, the constitution has been suspended. Why? Because we are now under a military regime. So when you are under a military dictatorship, the constitution doesn't work. And they bring in a de facto martial law. We are under a martial law. We don't want to accept it as Zimbabweans, but we are under a martial law. You know that you cannot gather and exercise your constitutional rights to demonstrate peacefully. Everyone here understands that we need to petition the government, but there are very few organizations that have petitioned the government. People are self-censoring because they know that the constitution has been suspended, or the constitutional rights are no longer there. Even journalists, we've got the freedom of and access to information, freedom of expression. Journalists are not allowed to report anymore. If you do so, you are imprisoned. You have seen what has happened to Chidi Chengeto and Blessed Mhlanga. So we need to engender and to uphold the constitution. Zimbabweans must say enough is enough. We want this constitution to work. For us, the civics and labor and students, it's not even our constitution. It was a political pact by the ruling elites then during the GNU. It is a constitution that was put in place by the people who are shredding it into pieces, people who are not upholding it. So we need to force them. Then secondly, we need to enforce rule of law. The law does not allow people to just wake up from their beds and announce that tomorrow, if you had a loan that was in process, you no longer had that opportunity. If you had a financial asset, the facility with the bank, overdraft facility, and you were depending on it, you are no longer have that facility. That is infringing the right to administrative justice. The government cannot do so. The government can also not change the conditions, the contracts between the bankers and their clients that they hold. Look at it. If you are a big company, no company in this country, in this world, buys or procures its raw materials using cash. There are very few instances. Most of them, they've got lines of credits. They've got credits lines. They use their overdrafts. So if you all of a sudden wake up today and someone says you no longer have that overdraft, you have got contracts with your other players, you are going to face lawsuits. They don't mind that you have got a dictatorship. They don't mind that your government doesn't think properly and rationally. They will take you to the courts and you lose more money than what you're facing. Most companies are paying their salaries using overdrafts. And many workers are going to go without salaries as we speak. But that is infringing the rights of workers to fair wage and the rights of companies and workers to have freedom to contract. So we need to enforce that the government must follow the laws that we have. The government must be the watchdog for the laws, for rule of law. It can't be the one committing or failing to uphold the constitution and the laws. So Zimbabweans have to act united, collectively, and ensure that we've got democracy, we've got constitutionalism, we've got rule of law, and we participate in the governance of our country.
Right. And how do we get people into that mindset? Because I feel like people have been disarmed somehow. We follow social leads more than we follow issues that have to do with our day-to-day runnings, that has to do with our bread and butter issues. We follow issues that involve love relationships. It's like we have defaulted to a nation that majors in minor, and we don't pay attention to the major issues. So how do we remobilize the demobilized masses, Mr. MUTASA? How do we do that?
So firstly, I don't want to blame citizens outrightly, but yes, in my view, I think we have not suffered enough. Maybe the government is also sending a message. Is also sending a message that you have not suffered enough. I think at the point where we are, we need to have self-respect as citizens, as Zimbabweans.
Right.
We can't be rushing crossing crocodile-infested Limpopo and Zambezi River just to run away from few men and women who are misgoverning this country.
Right.
When we can tell them to stop and they can stop. We've seen that happening. Smith said not in 1,000 years,
Right.
but he was told to stop. He was forced to stop and he stopped. In South Africa, we all grew up in our primary school years.
Right.
We never thought they will have independence. But the people said enough is enough. We need our independence. So we can do it. We can't suffer the indignity of what we are seeing happening in the Middle East. Our sisters who are put in servitude and slavery, running away because there are no opportunities, there are not jobs, and they are being treated like animals. They are being treated like slaves. We can't suffer the indignity we are seeing in South Africa. People are burnt alive. We need to have self-respect that this is the only country we have. We need this country to work, and we need to unite. There is nothing that should polarize Zimbabweans. If we are polarized by anything else, we are united in this big prison of poverty, misery, and subjugation.
Right.
And this should unite us. But also, we need to understand the dictatorship. Part of it is not supposed to be, we shouldn't be always blaming the citizens. We need to systematically understand the dictatorship. It is using varied ways to keep people quiet. Firstly, propaganda. So there's a lot of propaganda around. People are asking to follow Mbinga and the like. As a form of propaganda, there is misinformation. So we also need to upscale in terms of our political and civic and political education. We need to build back the consciousness that we used to have in the past. So we need to deal with propaganda, and some people are doing it well. Some organizations are doing it well. Zinasu is doing it. Atuz is doing it. We are seeing Opal doing it daily. We need many Opals in the journalistic sector. We need many brave students like this Zinasu leadership. We need many brave trade unionists like Obed and Robo Chele in Atuz. So we need to build that. The regime is also using censorship. So people are now self-censoring.
Right.
Everyone is seeing that things are not working.
But we can't
they
say anything
say
about
it quietly, quietly.
Mawan.
You can't even talk with your family about these issues.
No.
People are so afraid. So we need to free ourselves from fear. How do we do it? We need these platforms, and we are grateful with what the work that you are doing. Let us have these platforms. Let us have these voices spoken about. So censorship is one big issue. They are using the laws and everything, but they are also using co-optation. So the organizations that are supposed to be representing citizens, speaking to these issues, they are quiet. Look at it. How many trade unions are talking about these issues? I've seen only 2 statements from Atuz and from Zimbabwe, and now lately from ZCTU. But how many trade unions are supposed to be talking about this? This is a danger to workers' jobs. We should be seeing workers in the streets at the Minister of Finance office there, protesting and defending their jobs. We should be seeing workers at the Reserve Bank, protesting and defending their jobs at number 8 Samora Machel. Where are the workers? They're just quiet. Because in some instances, the regime has co-opted the elites in various organizations. We should be seeing churches and hearing prophets, pastors talking about this injustice.
Right.
I don't think God allows this injustice, and we should be hearing the men of the cloth talking about this injustice. What are they doing? They are quiet. They are waiting for the same rulers to visit their shrines, so to speak, and then they will glorify them as if they are doing something positive to this country. So that co-optation is real, but it is also using force. So we have seen people dying, being killed in the streets.
Right.
But my advice to Zimbabweans is that there's never been freedom without pain. So if we need to remain in this situation, and we can, they've shown us in 2008, we went worse than where we are. We are getting to 2008. They don't mind. We can get to those levels. We can become scavengers. They are not worried. But if we need freedom, dignity, and peace and development in this country,
Right.
then we need to be courageous and brave.
I think you raised a fundamental issue about lack of constitutionalism in this country. And I'm sure the majority of the people are now saying, ukapinda msitu uchida protest and no one is going to listen to you. Even if you raise your voice, you're going to be like, Hopewell, you raise your voice, you're arrested for actually exposing these injustices. You talk about what's happening in other nations, how these people are on the streets and they are, fighting. You're inciting the population of Zimbabwe to say you must also rise up and fight against this dictatorship that you talk about. So how then? I don't know if this would be an appropriate question. I see Mike Anzi, we have suffered enough. You say people have not suffered enough, to get them off their comfort zone and actually, fight this. Because you see people my age in other nations with other opportunities, taking on higher positions, they are buying houses, and our generation is failing to do that. The few that are able to do it, it's they're trying to set themselves up. And I think that's the attitude that we now have as Zimbabweans, that I need to work hard and make sure that my child is food, my child is going to school, I have the house that I want, and if I can achieve that, then who cares about what pronouncements are there? But I've got a fear, President, that you talked about. Return to 2008. 2008 was not nice. There was no food on the shelves. There was chaos in our cities. The money was, I remember I got my first job in 2008. I would get paid. The money was in the bank. I would go to the bank and queue up for 3 hours to get bus fare that would take me home and bring me back to the office, and stand again another 3 to 4 hours the next day to get money to go back home and come back into town, and nothing else. What should we, how do we get our concerns out there?
Yeah, so the first thing is for people to realize that we are getting into 2008. The effect of these measures is one that people are going to lose jobs, like we witnessed in 2008.
Right.
Prices are going to go up extremely high. We are going to have shortages, because we need to understand that the new model of economics is modeled on value chains.
Right.
So you disturb the one sector, you have disturbed the whole economy.
The whole chain, yeah.
For you to get your bread, you need someone who is making the plastic. The plastic seems to be a useless thing, but that
until
plastic
you don't
bag,
have it,
you can't get bread without it.
Right.
So you disturb the person making company making plastics. You have disturbed the bread is not going to come to your kitchens. So through the value chains analysis, we need to understand that whatever has been done to the banking sector, it is going to affect all of us.
Right.
We are going to see the dollar going worse. The devaluation is going to be worse. We are also going to see inflation going high. What they think they are going to address is exactly the opposite will happen, because the many people who have been doing open transactions and open business, they are going to go underground in the informal market, in the black market.
Right.
So people are going to continue to borrow because you can't lose your investment.
Right.
But you are going to borrow at usurious amounts.
We are going back to the black market of borrowing.
We've already seen the inflation in terms of US dollar prices, price increases, US dollar terms. So prices are going up because of the 4% tax, the 2% tax.
Right.
People are not longer going to bank. If you have got Forex, why should you go and bank and then lose 2%? And when you do a transaction, lose 4%. So people are economic agents are rational. They're going to take positions. Companies are going to take positions. Consumers are going to take positions. All of us,
right,
in positions that benefits you. So it's going to disrupt the whole market and make it even worse than where we are.
And so probably whatever they're trying to achieve is not going to be achieved.
No, they are going to get the opposite of what they are trying to achieve. And worse, they are going to lose even investors who were planning to come. You can't dive into a jungle. Investors are not stupid. They are not foolish. All investors are going to take a stand and wait until there's clarity.
Right.
So Zimbabweans must know that we are going to 2008. There's no doubt about that, unless we do something drastic. So what needs to be done? We need all voices.
Right.
People, the regime arrests Wopo Chimono because he will be the lone voice. He will be the only journalist speaking. If there are thousands of them, they don't even have capacity to arrest all of them.
Atukwana.
People arrest Peter MUTASA when we speak about trade union rights,
Right.
because I'll be the only one who will be
speaking
few.
about that?
If all of us, how many workers are in this country? How many workers, how many vendors do we have in this country?
Right.
If all vendors were to come out, they will, the system will listen to them. And I want to be very clear, I'm not inciting anyone.
Right.
I'm telling people about their constitution. The right to protest is a constitutional right under Section 59. And I think that's the second aspect we need to do. We need to raise awareness about people's constitutional rights.
Right.
People in Zimbabwe think they don't have a constitution. They don't have any particular rights. We've got the right to protest peacefully. We've got the right to demonstrate, to
Right.
be in the streets. We've got the right to petition. So by now we should be having people petitioning. And thirdly, we need coordination.
Right.
So many times in this country, you have people fighting for leadership of any initiative. But when you grant them leadership, they don't act.
No.
Many people were complaining that maybe ZINASO had not told us, had not consulted that widely. What more consultation do you need besides your hunger? What more signal do you need besides that your kid is not going to school?
Right.
Someone whose kid is not going to school because they've not paid school fees, they are saying they need a signal. A signal from where? You've been given your signal from your headmaster.
Right.
Someone who is sleeping hungry, they need a signal. Go into your kitchen and your pantry.
That's
There
your
is
signal.
where the signal is. So we need coordination. But
Right.
I think the greatest coordinator is our misery and our poverty. But organizations, crisis in Zimbabwe, we are not excused. ZCTU, for example, trade unions, churches, organizations, we need to come together quickly and come up with a Zimbabwe that we want, a model of Zimbabwe that we want, go collectively to those who are in power. We are not seeking to dispose them from power, but when it comes to elections, we have got a right to say, don't vote these people because you endure another 5 years of this nonsense.
Right.
So we are seeking them to just respect our rights, just restore our dignity. So there's nothing wrong with that. So citizens must wake up. Let us go and face those who are in power and tell them that this is not working.
And what is the role of parliament in that?
The parliament in Zimbabwe,
Right.
I've said we are under a military regime. So when you are under a military dictatorship, every institution of democracy, every institution that's supposed to engender democracy is rendered dysfunctional. So you go to your parliament, the parliament is dysfunctional. There's a whipping system there. Those guys, once they go there, they say whatever they say, no one listens to them in terms of those who are in executive.
Right.
They know that they cannot change anything. So you don't look at parliament, don't even look at judiciary. In normal countries, if we were in South Africa, we should have rushed to the parliament, to the constitutional court, and raise a constitutional argument that this is unconstitutional. But we know you go there, you face the Chief Justice who is on the bench at the benevolence of the executive. So they've destroyed the separation of powers. So you can't go to the judiciary, it's captured, it will not dispense justice, it will dispense injustice in our case. If we go today, we will not get justice. You can't rely on the other constitutional committees.
Right.
They are rendered dysfunctional. So when you are in a military dictatorship, as we have witnessed everywhere, the only power that works is the people's power. And I'm saying this, that it should never be violent. We must never be violent. Violence is the home ground of the military rulers. So the citizens must be peaceful. We are advocating for non-violent action, citizen action.
How is that done, Mr. MUTASA? How is non-violent action done in a country like ours, where even citizens who are sitting on the ground are assaulted by the police?
They assault you because you are few. If you go out in the streets as 50, they will assault you. If you go as 1 million, they don't have any mechanism to deal with 1 million people unless they are going to commit a genocide. And no one can commit a genocide of 1 million people. So the real problem, our real enemy is ourselves, our own fears,
Right.
our own lack of courage, and our own lack of resolve. people should not ask these questions, because what if people asked the same questions during colonial rule? Will you have been independent? No, we will not have been independent. What if people had raised the same questions in South Africa? Students, primary school students in Soweto, had to get out of school and flooded the streets. Yes, they were brutalized and killed, but they couldn't kill all of them.
Right.
And we need to be all united and fight this monster.
All right. So I think maybe the issue is who is going to come out, how many people comes out at the end of the day. We've seen students in Zimbabwe
How
demonstrating.
many are suffering?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if people are not coming out, they are not suffering. If the majority is suffering, then they should come out.
Right.
And it shouldn't be about who has made the call. If it is made by Zinaso, let us acknowledge that our kids have been brave. We're fearing. They've been brave and they've made a call. Give them the leadership. Let Zinaso lead us. We don't have a formula. We don't have who will manage to deliver us into Canaan. There's no Joshua. All of us are Joshuas. Whoever makes the first call, let us support and stand with them and make sure that we deliver ourselves into Canaan.
All right, this is Behind the Microphone, a program that is brought to you right here on Zimbabwe Daily. And we are talking to Mr. MUTASA, the chairperson of the Crisis Coalition of Zimbabwe. And I just want to read a few comments that have come through. This is a live show, so if you've got any questions, any comment, what you'd want to express, please do feel free. Anzina Mike, we have suffered enough. Tendai Choga feels that Parliament should impeach the president and the masses should support. And Rose says, we have suffered enough and it's now worse. You know, our grandparents were able to send our parents to boarding schools and still able to put food on the table and clothes. Now, it's yaye kungo tenga chikafu and hachi tokwane. I think this is the reality that we find ourselves, this generation. Our fathers, our grandfathers were able to send their children to boarding school off money, yavaishanda maprazi or yavaitengesa pamsika, and you'd see mwana ariku chinonzi chichikoro chiri kwazvimba uko, you know, the you know, Marist brothers and stuff. So in this generation, we don't know. I think the generation that is there now, it doesn't understand or appreciate that life can actually be better. So maybe that could be the problem. We are a square plug in a round hole, and we've sort of gotten used to, you know,
No, I want to comfort fellow compatriots and say, besides what I have said, I appreciate and understand the challenges and that it's not a lost cause. What will drive us is hope for a better life. And yesterday I was discussing with some workers in the informal economy.
Right.
He was saying, I'm already fought, even if things change, I can't go back to work. I don't have any experience. I've been just a vendor. So people are losing hope. Let us not lose hope. This country can change if we decide to change it. And if you look at it, why I'm saying we've not suffered enough, we don't need to bottle up our depression. We are seeing a lot of cases of people that are killing themselves, committing suicide.
Right.
There's a bad situation in this country where it now makes sense for a doctor, a nurse, a radiographer, a teacher to leave the classroom, to leave the surgery rooms, and go to South Africa and be a domestic worker who is earning 4,000 rands, or be a farm worker who is earning 4,500 rands. They earn much better. It makes economic sense for a doctor to leave the stethoscope and go and be a domestic worker. That is not normal. We shouldn't accept that. It's not normal. We should just simply say this can't happen in
maybe it's the effect
state.
of the education that we are getting.
Yes, but there's no better education than your life experience.
Right.
You can go and have many degrees, but your material conditions, the way you are living should be the best university for you. So you can't be a worker and say, I want to continue going to work in a bank, going to work in a factory, in a mine, risking your life in a mine underground and earn nothing. Any salary that gives you high blood pressure when you get the payslip.
Right.
Any salary that cannot feed your family.
Right.
Most of our workers are earning below the food poverty line, not the poverty that I'm like.
Right.
We can't buy food for our families.
Right.
We can't buy clothing. Had we not gotten the second-hand clothes, we will be moving naked in this country. So what we need to agree is that this cannot be acceptable. This is not acceptable. This is not what the gallant sons and daughters fought for and died for. And many were maimed. Some people are crippled as we speak now. They were maimed in the war. They didn't fight for this type of life that we are living. So we need to be resolute and say enough is enough. Yes, we are suffering, but we have not arrived at a point where we knock to each neighbor and say, this should not continue. This should not continue. And someone says, what should we do? And you say, let us use the constitutional rights that we have. Let us flood these streets and demand that the government govern us well. They can continue. If they wanted, the best way for a dictator to rule a country forever is to be good in terms of crafting a good economic policy, good social policy. They should give us roads. They should give us schools. They should give us water. They should give us decent salaries. A benevolent dictator is difficult to remove. But a malevolent dictator like what we have here, definitely people should stand up and say enough is enough.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Mr. MUTASA, for coming through. We continue to observe what is happening on the political economy landscape so that we see where this is going. At the end of the day, we wonder if some of the projects that are taking place, even the ERRP, whether it's actually cash funded or it was on a credit facility, and how it's going to pan out. But we'll continue to bring in more people into the studio to talk about these issues, because at the end of the day, we want to build a better Zimbabwe, and we can only do it when we are informed. Let us share, let us like, and let us keep encouraging these conversations to take place, because unless we talk about it, we are not going to act on it. This is Zimbabwe Daily. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Mr. MUTASA, for coming through.
It has been my pleasure, and I just want to urge citizens, we should not accept what is happening. Get up, stand up for your rights. Bob Marley said so, and trade unions, churches, students, civil society, all of us. If you are not registered to vote now when things are this bad, you are doing a disservice to yourselves and to future generations. Luta continua. We can do it. We can change this country.
Amen. We can change this country, and it is our responsibility collectively to do this. Thank you so much for tuning in to Behind the Microphone. My name is Yvonne Muchaka, and let us continue to follow, like, and share our Facebook page. And thank you so much for your support. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Mike, for your contributions and your questions. You said non-violent protests will never work under this regime. They will send soldiers to kill people like what they did last time. I think this question was adequately responded to by Mr. MUTASA, who said, Kanataka Wandam Road, they won't have anyone to really attack. So let us hold hands together. United we stand, divided we fall. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's bye-bye for now.